Hello and welcome to yet another history lesson. So we are still looking at dictatorship in Europe. Last time we were talking about Adolf Hitler, and in today's lesson we are going to look at Benito Mussolini. So the rise and fall of fascism in Italy. So it is very important for us to know what was happening in this period. So the events that we're going to talk about, they happened after the First World War. So these are some of the effects of the First World War. All right. So we see that Benito Mussolini was from Italy, and Italy also contributed a piece to the First World War. All right. So how did we come up to? How did we go to a point where we find what we call fascism? And maybe in brief, we can just try and look at what exactly is fascism. What is it? What does it mean? And how does it affect Italy at this point in time and a rise to dictatorship in Europe in general? Okay, so when you're talking about fascism, this is the type of governance which is more dictatorial, a government that suppresses any form of opposition, authoritarian, one party state kind of a government that emerged in Europe. But we find it mostly in Italy under Benito Mussolini. All right, fine. So let's get into it and see some of the elements, the background, what were his policies, and how was he defeated. So we see that this ideology of fascism, it started around 1883. Where Mussolini was born, and we see him as the founder of fascism. He became the prime minister of Italy in 1922 after the March on Rome. Okay, so we are saying all the problems that were happening in Italy, all the economic meltdown, social chaos, and political instability. He took advantage of that to take over power. So he declared a dictatorship by 1924 when he was nicknamed, Deuce, or the leader. So in his domestic policy, we see that politically he had a one-party state that was his own party. There was strict censorship of media as well as any literature that was going against him. He banned any form of opposition in terms of political parties. And in economic, we just say this in brief. So it was a corporate state. However, he went through a number of battles, like there was the battle for grain, there was the battle for beds. All these were elements that you can actually see in Mussolini's domestic policies. So, under this battle for grain, battle for beds, you see these were policies that were introduced by Mussolini in trying to win over the people. So, for battle for grain, for example, he wanted Italy to be self-sufficient in terms of they wanted to reduce the imports. They wanted to have their own wheat and grain in their own country. So Mussolini was encouraging uh, the farming of wheat in northern Italy. Unfortunately, in southern Italy, it was a little bit dry. But in northern Italy, he tried by all means, to make Italy self-sufficient, and it had some success. And then for better for bets, this is where we see he was encouraging more birth rates to build a strong empire. Remember, for an army, you need a strong, you need strong and more people. So this is what Mussolini was advocating for under the battle of grain and battle for beds. We also see that there was propaganda in schools as well as youth groups, and women were encouraged to stay at home. So, under the policy of Mussolini, this is where we see much exploitation of women as they were forced to be housewives rather than empowered women. And he also changed the textbooks as well as the dues is always right. That those kind of manifestos to make sure that he stays in power and everyone can actually appreciate his efforts. So all these domestic policies, some of them they benefited to a great extent, some to a less extent. But what we know is he tried to bring order and peace in Italy to try and reduce the problems that Italy was facing at this point in time. All right. Now that brings us to the next topic, that is the foreign policy. So he was an expansionist. He had expansionist aims, to be great again. He wanted Italy to be great again, and to take other parts of the world. All right. So we see that Mussolini had quite a number of foreign alliances, especially how he depended on Hitler. Uh, Both Hitler and Mussolini are now, studied dictators. So they had the same view. They wanted to be superpowers. They wanted to revenge territories that they had lost after the World War One. So we see that Mussolini had alliances with Hitler mostly, and there was a close relationship between Italy and Germany at this point in time. However, Mussolini did not go that far. He was unfortunately defeated. So the reason why he was defeated was he was too he had, he was too ambitious, and he wanted to expand in areas that were actually difficult. We see this by his need to expand to North Africa, and where he was actually humiliated and he had military failures as the Italian army was poorly equipped and demoralized. Italy became a burden on Germany because Italy had all this confidence because she had Germany's backing. But we are saying we are coming from the World War, so many deaths, soldiers are tired, so it was not a success. We also see that Italy was facing some economic problems that Mussolini failed to solve. There was shortage of food, there was shortage of fuel, raw materials for industry and agriculture. So this weakened the war, and the living standards collapsed. And you can also see that soldiers were demoralized because of the problems at home. Just to continue, we can see that um, Mussolini did not get that much support from his home people. He had lots of popular support. Opinions were divided in Italy. Therefore, his propaganda it failed, and Italians they blamed Mussolini for bringing them back to the wars that they had come back from. There were a lot of strikes, protests, and discontent grew from people in Italy, which led to his blow of okay. Also, collapse of fascist party support. So his fascist party, it was not that much solid. There were divisions within the party, as some voted against him. We also see that Italy, it was ruled by the king Victor Emmanuel. He dismissed Mussolini, and he lacked support from King Victor Emmanuel II, which was also a final blow for him. So his final defeat, when he tried to invade Sicily, allies invaded Sicily and Italy. So Sicily is part of an Italian state, so it was invaded by Britain as well as France and Russia. So you also see Mussolini was arrested. He was later on rescued by Germans, and he led a puppet state, the Italian Social Republic. He was captured and executed by people from his own country. So that's how Mussolini was defeated. So some of the questions that you might find, they will be asking, to what extent were his domestic policies important, or the foreign policies, to what extent did they build the army, and what some of the reasons why he was actually defeated. So we have mentioned most of this above, and I hope you have learned. Please feel free, if you have any questions, feel free to ask questions as we go. All right. Again, some of the questions you might actually face are, Mussolini was known as what? Mention two actions taken by Mussolini to reduce unemployment. So all these elements, they are there to help us read more, and to know more about Italy under Benito Mussolini and fascism. Until next time, it's bye for now.